Welcome back to Juice's Arthropods. I am Juice, and today we are talking about tarantulas versus true spiders, which make better pets, and can we end the age-old argument of which one's the superior spider? So on one of my previous videos, I believe it was the roaches, I did a little mini rant. I'm also going to link that video right up here somewhere. I don't know, I'm not the one that does the editing. Anyhow, during that time, one of the things I talked about is just the superiority complex that some people have, specifically with tarantula owners. Not to throw you guys under the bus, I myself am a tarantula owner, but it's just something that kind of gets tiring, as I hear it a lot of which spider is the better pet. So what I want to do today is I want to just forget our differences, set aside, maybe hand out an olive branch, and let's look at all of the factors that come into owning a creature like a spider, a true spider, or a tarantula, what the difference is, and then what that care would look like, and let you guys make the decision on which really is actually the better pet to own. So before we really get into it, let's talk first about what is the difference between a true spider and a tarantula. A true spider, for our intents and purposes today, is going to be any spider from the Araneae family that is not a tarantula. Tarantula has very specific things about it. So for instance, with true spiders, they can do a whole lot of this, and they got a whole lot of maneuverability when it comes to their chelicerates, pedipalps, all of those sort of things. When it comes to tarantulas, they only have pretty much this motion here, and that's it. They're going to attack from above. They can't do a whole lot of weirdness. They're essentially, and I hate to say this, they're essentially kind of a non-evolved form of spider, whereas true spiders have a lot of evolutions, and there's so many more different types of species of the true spiders. So we're going to talk about everything else versus tarantulas, just so we know what kind of is on stake here, because, and a lot of these are going to be very generalizations, because you know, at the end of the day, I can't speak for an entire species versus another one. It's going to be complicated. So anyhow, so let's first talk about diet. What is the difference in diet between these two creatures? Not a lot. Not a lot changes, honestly. Now, one thing I will say is a sling or spiderling of a tarantula is going to be probably on average about the same size as a medium-sized true spider. So when it comes to what sort of feeders are you going to need to get for it, I would say expect with any baby spider, whether it's a spiderling tarantula or it's a baby spiderling of a true spider, you're going to need fruit flies. And I hate it. I know anybody that's got, if you're a person that loves fruit flies, good on you. Your life is better than mine. But I have to deal with these stupid things all the time. They're just annoying. They're kind of a pain to store. You gotta feed them, otherwise the stuff gets rotten and stinks. It's just, there's a whole slew of things. So when it comes to which one is better when it comes to diet, well, it really is gonna depend on what is the thing that really inspired you to get a spider. Was it you wanted to see something take it down? Well, then I gotta tell you, tarantulas, super cool, but I got Debbie over here. She's going to hunt down things too, so it really depends on what you're looking for. When it comes to the types of feeders you're going to be able to provide, I would say on average you're going to want to provide all of them with a variety diet. So ultimately, when it comes down to the diet, you know, you can have everything from dubia roaches, you could have red runners. It really just depends on the size of the bug. I've got, you know, some of my velvet spiders down here. They're really, really slow when it comes to aging, so they're going to be in a stage of pin crickets and, fruit flies for a very long time. But some tarantulas, like my Grammostola pulchra here that you'll never see because they're always hiding, they're also going to age incredibly slow. So when it comes to diet, I would say ultimately it's kind of a tie. They're going to have very similar diets. There's not going to be a whole lot of differences. It really is just going to depend on what you want, because let's say, for instance, you're like, oh, I really love the jumping spider. It's in, a more aerial version. It can jump, it can do all these things, and it's got this cool climbing trees. Well, there's also a tarantula version of that too. So our arboreal species will do the exact same. So I would say all in all, when it comes to diet, both are relatively easy. Now, when it comes to the metabolic rate of both of these creatures, You're really gonna, you can't beat the tarantula, man. These things can go a very long time without eating. Now, true spiders can too, but their metabolism's a lot better than a tarantula. Lothier, I can feed, I mean, honestly, she's so fat at the moment, I could probably not feed her for another 2-3 weeks, and it would not affect her at all. She would be totally fine. The true spiders, on the other hand, a little bit smaller, a little bit more adaptable. You know, jumping spiders, they're gonna eat a little bit more common, or a little bit more often than the others. So I think it boils down to, how often do you want to feed them? Is the feeding them part the part that really excites you? Then honestly, I would say go with true spiders. If how cheap they are is what excites you, then I would go with tarantulas. Okay, so next I want to talk about ease of care. And for anything, I believe ease of care, and I'm sure you all agree, is how much is it going to cost beyond just the spider? So I have a couple different options here. So I want to showcase when it comes to what you can kind of get yourself into. When it comes to arboreal tarantulas, you can kind of sky's the limit with these guys. You can make it pretty high. I mean, it really just depends on how big the tarantula is. Something like a P. metallica or a P. regalis or any of those sort of things, you can probably get a cage about as big as the one sitting next to me, and it would be totally fine. But when it comes to, I would say, any arboreal, or I'm sorry, any fossorial or terrestrial tarantula, this cage here, this is Tarantula Cribs large. You're never really going to need something bigger unless you're talking like a big old bird eater or something like that. And then obviously you need to get a bigger cage. But for the most part, this is as big as it gets. He's going to be, or Lothier is going to be totally fine. And this thing for the rest of her life, you know, you can kind of one and done it. So if you want to talk about maybe you got a little bit of money right now, and you know, like maybe you were saving up, you got yourself a curly hair like Loth, and you were really excited, you got it for like $40, but you only have like $100 to your name. You can get a very reasonable size, much, I would say, cheaper and cheaply made product that you could put them in, and it would be no issues until then. You know, and the nice thing about some of these like Tarantula Cribs, I love these guys, is the fact that they have different sizes of cage, which is great for me because I like to reuse them. And I know all tarantula keepers too. They, you know, they'll get like different cages and then they'll just like backfill a tarantula because why not? You got the extra cage, right? So you have a lot of availability for different things. I've seen some people get real creative with it, go to like a Joann Fabrics or like a Michaels, and they get like the baseball cases, and they're able to do all kinds of drilling and do all craziness. So you can get really creative with it, as long as the tarantula in it can't physically open the cage. And I want to address this for 1 second. These guys, much stronger than you're thinking, so just be very, very careful when you do this, because these guys can play tug of war with you very easily. So Spider-Man was a hero for a reason, let's just put it that way. Now, when it comes to the true spiders, I don't know, man. Honestly, they can be in just like a Dixie cup. Like, it does not matter. They're so chill. They're so easy. You know, my Phidippus regius, I have a breeding pair of male and female. This is Debbie here. I've got her in one of these cages. I can't even remember the brand, so I apologize. But, you know, something like this is more than enough room for a Phidippus regius to roam around in. You know, she can hunt. They really don't go anywhere. So, like, even if you have a black widow in a cage like that, as long as you make sure to seal off all the exits, and there are plenty in these kind of cages, they really doesn't matter. So when it comes to, you know, which one is going to be cheaper, I've typically noticed tarantulas cost a little bit more for the cages, only because Debbie is a lovely spider, but she's less than an inch long and will never get bigger than that, and she can't pry these things open. Whereas Lothier, I have literally played tug of war with her before with some of the moss that she didn't like me moving, and she is much stronger than you think she is. So you have to put a little bit more money into the cage. So but now this is where it's gonna get, this is where the true spiders are gonna lose some points though, is, do you see Lothier? I don't know if you can with the shot. I'm being flagged that no, you can't. She's not gonna do a lot. She's going to sit there pretty much all day, and sometimes she's not going to move because they're basically stationless rocks that do nothing. For some people, they're just a hole in the ground that they never see. So having something that you can kind of one and done the cage is all said and done, right? They're not really exciting. Whereas with true spiders, you know, the benefit to these guys is they're going to move around a lot. You know, even if it's like a black widow, you get something cool like that, you know, they're going to be walking around a lot. So I would say you're going to probably maybe end up spending a little bit more money on those guys just because of their capabilities of movement. But when it comes to how easy it is to take care of these, tarantulas win every time. And the reason for this is tarantulas are especially hardy creatures. They have evolved hundreds of million years and have not really changed. They are just the end-all be-all when it comes to simple. So you can have 100 to 200 of these guys, and man, it is going to be very, you'll have like a 2-hour feeding session or something. But for the most part, I feed these guys, I want to say probably once a week at best. I feed them a little bit often. Loth I feed maybe once every 2 weeks or so when I notice her abdomen less rotund, but everybody else, I mean, these guys are all pretty easy. Whereas, Debbie, or I've got my wolf spider in here, my velvet spiders, I have to feed them a little bit more often. So the care needs become a little bit more specialized. And when you've got something that's smaller, you also have to do things like you can't provide them a full water dish like I can with Loth, because, she's big enough, she's not going to drown. Where some of my true spiders, they can fall in and then they can't get back out. So when you look at both sides of the care argument, when it cost, things like that, really boils down to it's going to be a tie again, because where, true spiders are going to want, on the one hand, take a little bit more of the care because you can't put the water dish in there and things like that, a little bit more upfront care, the tarantulas are going to cost a little bit more money when it comes to this. So I think really what it will boil down to at that point is the cost of the actual species. And this is where tarantulas are going to lose pretty hard, because true spiders on average, I think at most you might see $50, but tarantulas go up to somewhere around $200, $300, $400 at a time. I've seen even $600, $700. So ultimately, I think on this one, true spiders kind of win a little bit because they are significantly cheaper, but maybe some of you disagree. So next I want to talk about humidity. Guess what? Humidity is case-by-case basis. So I know this is something that I like to talk about with my other bugs, but ultimately humidity needs is going to be case-by-case, and I haven't found anything personally that's too ridiculous. With the tarantulas, if they're in arid, dry climate, still keep their water bowl full, spray a little bit, but ultimately, I haven't found either one of these are more difficult, but I think the true spider loses a little bit of points because they can't have the water bowl, and that to me is kind of pretty important, because that means I have to every day go through there, and I gotta spray down, as you can see here, I gotta spray down Debbie's cage with water every single day. So it adds an extra step. So honestly, true spiders lose in the humidity category. But other than that, treat them the same way. Humidity ranges are differ. I would say for all arthropods on average, you want it to be about 60 to 70+% humidity. Just keep in mind that they are a creature that needs a little bit of humidity in the air so that they can molt properly. But other than that, I mean, I think both of them are tied, leaning a little bit less away from the true spiders, a little bit more for the tarantulas, just because you have to spray down the cage. Now, the next segment is life expectancy, and this is where true spiders are going to lose hardcore. Longest living true spiders, I would say the Rhesus walkeneri or any of the velvet spiders, those spiders can live 4+ years. But this is where the tarantulas, man, their lack of having a lot of evolution has really helped them out. Mature male tarantulas, on average, can live anywhere between 3 to 5 years. I'm obviously being generalizing for species. But females of the same tarantula species can live anywhere between 15 to 25 years. But I've also heard word that there was a spider that was a trapdoor spider living up to 40-some years in captivity. So if we just use it off of, let's say, this particular species, Loth here is going to live 20+ years, easily. Not even going to be a problem. Whereas Debbie over here is going to live about a year. On average, true spiders live very, very short lives. They might hit 2-3 years on some species, but on an average, they're going to be about a 1 year and done kind of pet, which is why they're typically about 9 times less expensive than like most tarantulas. And this is why some of these species of tarantulas cost as much as they do. Because P. metallica, for instance, is going to be a pet you are going to have for basically the entire adult life of a child. As well, obviously they'll live longer than that. But you see what I'm saying. They are a very long-lived pet as long as they're a female. They're male. I've heard some of them hook out. That's when the tibial hooks form in the last molt. They can hook out and die in 2-3 years. So if you have a mature female, it's going to live a lot longer than male or female of any true spider. So if having a spider that's cheaper but also understanding that they're not going to live that long is something that you're okay with, then true spiders would be fine. But if you're looking for a pet that you can have for many, many years to come, including getting for a child that they can have when they go to college, definitely go with the tarantula. Now, I want to talk about something that a lot of people are going to want to know when they're talking about pets, and that's, can I hold it, and what happens if it bites me? This is where the true spider versus tarantula argument's gonna really get a little bit more finesse to it. I personally don't hold any of my tarantulas. Why? They don't like it. I don't want to do it. There doesn't serve any purpose. They're covered in setae. You know, they're feeling my pulse. They don't get any enjoyment out of it, so I just don't see the need to do it. Do some people do it? Yes. Am I against people that hold them? No. Do you really want to risk the potential of getting bit? If the answer is yes, you're worth that, then fine, go for it. But me, I've seen how big the fangs are in some of these guys, and it's not a fear. I think it's just common sense that you probably shouldn't hold something that could at any given time bite you. That's just the way that I am. I also don't hold rattlesnakes or any venomous snakes either, so I don't know, call me crazy. Anyhow, if you want to hold these species, let's take, and in all of these scenarios, we're talking about a chill spider. I'm not talking about like an OBT or any of the the old world spiders, or tarantulas rather, that are gonna get potentially pretty dangerous. So we're talking about non-medically significant versions of venom for both sides. I would say, honestly, a true spider is just an easier pet to hold when it comes to your safety. When it comes to the creature's safety, I would say a tarantula is going to be a better pet to hold. The reason I want to differentiate that is, you know, Debbie is great to hold, but if I just squeeze her a little bit, she explodes and there's nothing that you can do about it. Whereas Lilith here, I'm more concerned with her ability of survival, because with tarantulas, they can't really survive a fall. Debbie can fall about 6 to 8 inches. It's not even going to affect her. She's going to bounce back up. She's got her web that she's going to have already tagged. You know, it's a whole thing. With Lilith, though, she's basically a fat water balloon. She's going to hit something after about a 4, you know, let's say a 6-inch fall, and she's going to burst all over the place. So, you know, when it comes to the safety of the creatures, I just don't personally prefer to hold these particular, the tarantulas, just because, let's say, hypothetically, Lilith decides to bite me in that moment. I'm going to yeet her across the room as my first instinct, and she's going to die. If I yeet Debbie across the room, she could die, but she might not. And that, to me, is where it really boils down to my priorities as far as, do I want to risk it, ultimately? So when it comes to ability to hold, I would say, ultimately, you know, kind of a tie. Because when it comes to, are they going to harm you? Tarantulas lose a couple points. When it comes to, could you harm them? You're going to lose a little points for the true spiders. So, a little bit of even. And I would say that, let's flip this now to, let's add medical significance of venom to the equation. There are far worse medically significant venomed tarantulas on the market than there are true spiders. I think the worst it gets in the true spider community is probably Black Widow. 75% of the time, not going to have any effects but a minor bite. But if a P. regalis tags you, you're in for a world of hurt. So, I think when I view which one is better, I think of it in terms of, am I giving this to an adult or am I giving this to a child? And how smart is that adult and or child? So really that's what I think we need to look at here. So when it comes to being, if it's a child, I would say ultimately start them on true spiders. Get them with someone like Lilith later on. Maybe, you know, a simple terrestrial spider, or a tarantula rather, like a curly hair or a rosy or anything like that. That's going to be very simple. Grammostola pulchra, all great tarantulas. Can you hold them? Absolutely. They're great starter tarantulas, striped knees, things like that. Don't start them off with something like an OBT or a P. regalis or anything like that. That's just crazy. I mean, you're a kid. You do whatever you want, but you're going to regret that. When it comes to true spiders, jumping spiders all day. Your kids are going to love them. They're going to be great. We have babies for sale here soon. But also, they have an intelligence that Lilith just doesn't have. I love her to death, but, you know, Debbie and these guys, they look at you. They got those front-facing eyes. They're very coherent of what's going on. You know, if you scare them a little bit, they'll let you know. Whereas, like, you know, Lilith, on the other hand, every time I fill her water dish, she attacks it like like it's a prey. So just there's an intelligence that's just not there for tarantulas. So I would say if you're getting it for a kid, start them off with true spiders. If they do a really good job with true spiders, then you work your way up to a tarantula, just because kids have a tendency to drop things and squish things, and it's much easier to replace a Debbie, sorry Debbie, than it is like a Lolth or any of my grandma stolas at the end of the day. So what if you want to breed them? Which one's easier? True spiders, every single time. Here's why. Even if it's a black widow, you put in with another black widow, and they're gonna very slowly do their thing. I mean, when I bred Debbie over here, you know, it was stressful, sure, but I was in no danger. Whereas, let's say I'm breeding P. metallica. Now I've got a medically significant venom spider that can teleport across the room, and there's 2 of them, and they've got 1.5 to 2 inch fangs. So, ultimately, end of the day, this is where true spiders win every time, man. Breeding, easy as hell. They get an egg sac, you take the egg sac, you're good to go. Take an egg sac from Molt for a second. Go ahead. Just reach on in there and try to grab it. I dare you. It's not going to be easy. So when it comes to breeding, true spiders, 100% easier. Just trust me on this. And if you want to do it with tarantulas, that's fine. But not going to be as easy. So to kind of wrap this all up, let's first talk about biggest pros for both of these, and let's talk about biggest cons for both of these. Just because, you know, I feel like so far it's been a lot of ties, and I just want you guys to know I have more tarantulas than I have true spiders, so I'm not particularly fond of this which one is better game, only because I love both of them equally. Each one has their pros, each one has their cons. So when it comes to the pros, let's talk first about the tarantulas. And I know I keep mentioning Lolth, but she's my favorite. Don't tell any of the rest of them that. The biggest pro for tarantulas is ultimately just the ease of care. If I want to go on a 2-week-long vacation, as long as she's got water, she's good to go. I could go on a year vacation as long as she had an endless supply of water. She would never need me. There's been examples of people that have had tarantulas get lost in their house for over a year, and then they come back and they're totally fine. Have they been trying to eat stuff around? Yeah, probably. But my point is, they're just very prehistoric animals that really don't need your help. This Grammostola pulchra that's in here, I have not seen now for 6 weeks. I know she's there, and the reason I know that is because they're drinking the water and they're doing all the things, but they tend to just come out periodically and then bury their door back up. So very, very, very simple creature. Now, arboreal creatures are going to probably be a little bit different. For the most part, tarantulas are chill. They're the easiest pet on the planet. Con. All of them have the biggest damn fangs you've ever seen. Now, that's not a con for me, who loves to feed them and has always loved spiders. But that is a con for me when it comes to how much do I trust this creature when I'm holding it. Some people, that's not a problem, and I'm sure I'm going to get some comments about, like, just grow a spine. But at the end of the day, that's a con. No matter what you think of. There's a reason why ball pythons and hognose snakes are some of the most commonly liked snakes on the planet, and that's because their chances of biting you are significantly less than other ones, right? So if you're the type of person that's thinking, well, I would love to get a spider, but I don't trust getting bit, or you're worried about getting bit, don't get these guys. They're maybe just a little bit too much for you for now. Once you realize, though, that spiders are very simplistic, and for the most part, I mean, I could touch my hand all over the cages and stuff like that. She could bite through the holes. She doesn't bother me. And in fact, with tarantulas, more often than not, they're, especially old, the New World species, they're going to just flick that setae at you, and it's going to be just a cloud storm of itchy crap that's going to hurt you. So when it comes to pros, I would say ease of care, great. Negative, not the best creature to hold, only because they do have the teeth, and if it's not the teeth, and more importantly in 90% of the scenarios, it's the setae that they kick off, which are basically urticating hairs that are going to stick in you, and it's going to be terrible and can cause airway and breathing issues. So I would just say that's a big con, especially if asthma or something like that. Or, you know, you see some people that put them on their faces. Don't do that. That's stupid. You're just asking them to get like an eye full of hair eventually. So biggest pro with these guys is ultimately just that. They could bite you if they wanted to, or they can get an absolute crap ton of these hairs in you, which is the most likely option that they're going to choose. So that would, I say, the biggest con. Biggest pro for true spiders. They are very cheap. And this is the part that appeals to me a little bit more. the true spiders tend to be a little bit more intelligent. And when it comes to intelligence, you know, like Phidippus regius or any of the jumping spiders, crazy beautiful and just crazy intelligent. Not saying anything against tarantulas, trust me, there are some very gorgeous tarantulas, which I will link examples below. But when it comes to the true spiders, they just have, some of them just have an intellect that you just simply cannot get in the tarantulas. You know, you can build essentially like a very, I'm using the word bond, but it's a much more simplistic version of that. But you can just kind of trust them a little bit more at the end of the day. Like, you kind of know what's going on. Like, example, they will very obviously expose their fangs to you like you're about to get bit, so you kind of have a little bit more of an understanding. And they're way slower when it comes to attacking you. Like, if Debbie wanted to bite me, I'm gonna know like way faster that she's about to bite me, whereas Loth can teleport essentially and go the fastest you've ever seen a creature move, and then suddenly sink her fangs into me if she wanted to. Cons with these guys, it's ultimately just kind of like we talked about, they just die. And you know, it's one of those things, the young and beautiful die young, right? Like, these guys are so smart, and then they die just tragic lives. Like, they're just a tragedy waiting to happen for you. But man, for the time you're gonna have them, like, I've had Debbie here for probably 6 to 8 months, and I was really concerned when I got her because I was really afraid, like, well, she's gonna die, I'm gonna be sad. Yeah, but it's been an awesome 6 months. I mean, there's so much intelligence, these creatures. So biggest pro, intelligence. Biggest con, just a life expectancy just isn't what you want it to be. But they are a very easy pet to breed. So if you decided that you loved them so much, get a male or get a female, and you can breed them out, and you'll have a whole lot of babies. Because holy crap, do they breed? That's all I have. I mean, ultimately, looking at both of these, I think it's kind of a tie, guys. I'm sorry. I know that you guys were hoping for some like tarantula dominated version, or maybe you know, true spiders people were really hoping that I would come back and be like, haha, but you know, I'll tally these up, but at the end of the day, I think both of them are great species. So, you know, really it just boils down to, what do you want out of your pet? Do you want it to live for 20 some years? Get a tarantula. Do you want a very intelligent spider that you can high five if you wanted to with their little tiny, you know, pedipalps? Get a Debbie here. And if you don't want any of those, and you want a spider that's so freaking cool that when the females give birth, they literally give their life to their babies by melting their own insides down, then get a velvet spider. I'll show you all the B-roll below. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. I hope this helps. And if you have any spider questions, I have a story on Instagram right now, and I will be sharing it along. We will be doing Pedantic Semantic episode 2 here soon. Any questions you guys have, please feel free to fill out that Google Forms, and we will do that live probably by the end of the month. And last but not least, like, subscribe, and check out our store. We have a bunch of breeding projects. Please don't just look at the individual things. Go over to the breeding project. You can see what we got going on here. You know, I'm going to have all kinds of spider breeding projects going on at the same time here. So to be continued. And thank you.